This video is going to be quite a bit different than the ones I usually do, but I thought of an idea as I'm going through and learning the patterns, learning how things sequence, learning cycles. I realized that there's a way to show that in an analog. This is something that I made years ago. When was it? 1999. And let me show you how it works. I'm going to turn it on. I'm actually going to set that right there. What is going to happen? Can you hear that? That represents the sound of a motor running up and a centrifugal clutch being engaged to make it work. Of course, it's all a simulation. I've got this guy sitting here like some antique thing. Anyway, what is going to happen is that this is going to stop at every chair. Simulating loading passengers. There are 8 chairs. As it goes through, it's counting each chair. It's a pretty slow count. How it's doing that is through an infrared beam. This little box right here for putting your 10 cents in to go on the ride actually contains a very small infrared LED that's shooting a beam back into this block back here. You see it stopped at all 8, and now what it does is it sequences, and what it's going to do is rotate 4 times complete, and then it's going to begin stopping again and simulating the ride is over, changing out passengers, and then going again. How it's doing that is that there are 8 chairs, 4 times, it counts to 32. This is the circuitry. I designed the circuit myself and made the circuit board at home using hand etching techniques, dry label transfers. And you can see all of the circuits that are making it work. I went pretty old school with this. Here's what's happening. This right here is the infrared transmitter. That's what's creating the beam right here to shoot across. Over here is a receiver. That's picking up the signal. Every time the chair goes through, it's going to break the beam, and that creates a count which goes into other places, which causes counters to start coming into play. When you first turn it on, everything sits still for a second. There's a circuit that keeps everything quiet. It just starts everything at the 0 point, and once it's done, the sequences begin. The first one is the chair stopping at each one of them after a count of 8. A circuit called a flip-flop switches over a different circuit, which causes this to run continuously until the count of 32. Then the flip-flop counts that, realizes that's what's happening, switches back to the other circuit and lets that happen, and it just continues to sequence that way after it's been started until it's been interrupted and then restarted again. Patterns, sequences. This is all happening in a sequential manner in the same way that the stories work. And what we're doing right now, you see it got to 32. What we're doing right now is learning what each of these circuits does. As we're going through and trying to figure out what is nested in the material, we're looking at how did we begin? What happens next? How do we interrupt that cycle and create something else happening? That this right here is a perfect analog, well, a reasonable analog for the process and why it is complicated. We need to understand this entire thing, but in order to do it, we first have to understand what each individual one is. And that's what we're doing. Remembering people in their day and age that were their philosophers spent their lifetimes making these stories. times making these stories. They're actually not that complicated when you consider all of that. Imagine your entire life is just creating stories. You think you could come up with something? I believe we all could. Anyway, there we go. That's what we're doing. Trying to, understand the patterns, the cycles, recognize them, interrupt them, change them. Or make them stop completely. Love one another. See you in the next video.